Can you believe we're halfway through July?
Halfway through July, I was gonna say I'm embarrassed that we're both wearing the same colored t-shirt. We like look exactly the same.
We look like some kind of gay version of we're enlisting to the army. We're both in various shades of olive green.
Yeah. Or, I'm the one I'm playing the younger version of you in the movie.
We can do that. That's right. Because I'm that fucking old.
No, 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 no.
My hip might say that's true.
Your hip might say that's true. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm
Oh
sorry for
no,
your hip.
it's all fine. It's all good. It's all good.
Welcome to Gays Reading.
Hey, hey.
We have books that are coming out
We
today.
do have books that are coming out today. I have a couple here.
Well, we don't have books that are coming out today, but authors
Did
do.
we tell everyone our new book is coming out?
Hit
Uh,
it.
so, Smother Moss by Elisa Allerine is coming out today, which I don't have. You haven't read this yet, have you?
No, but I'm really excited too. It looks so good.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. Set in 1980s Appalachia. For our fantasy and kind of fantasy adjacent people, The Lost Story by Meg Shepherd that comes out today. And looks really, really, really interesting that they say for fans of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. That would definitely be me. For the thriller fans for the summer, Stephen Graham Jones' I Was a Teenage Slasher comes out. He's got huge fans, like huge fans.
When you said I was a I was like, what are you about to say?
And the other thing that comes out today which looks so fascinating, is Banal Nightmare by Hallie Butler. But look at that cover. I know they can't see it. It's the freakiest, most frightening cover of two
Yeah.
women's heads that almost look like they're morphing into one. So
You
I'm
can go to our bookshop.org page to buy any of these books and see that cover in the meantime.
yes, you
So
can.
you can see what Brett was talking about. If you like what you're hearing, share us with your friends. Follow us on social media at Gays Reading. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, please feel free to give us a 5-star review or subscribe so that more people can hear about what the gays are reading. Something that we have to talk about today is there have been a lot of celebrity deaths recently, but the one that really made me sad and the one I wanted to talk about is Shelley Duvall. Because when I was a kid, I was a big fan of fairy tale theater.
Mm.
Shelley Duvall's fairy tale theater, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it was basically these short episodes of fairy tale adaptations, and they felt very theatrical, and they all had celebrities playing all of these characters, and it was such an impactful TV show for me as a kid, and I
I
think
think you
it
can see them
really,
on YouTube now too, a lot of them.
I'm sure they're
At the
all on
very least, you can
YouTube.
see an introduction where she comes out. Hi, I'm Shelley Duvall. Yes.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Yes. So anyway, thank you, Shelley Duvall, for being formative in my storytelling appreciation.
I did take a moment where I thought he's going to say it's Shannon Doherty.
No, but what was so weird is literally the day before Franklin talked about Shannon Doherty, which was so like
In
we've
what context?
something about witches. I can't remember. There was like something
Charmed.
related. Yeah. No, but there was like something that reminded him of Charmed. And then he said something, 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 Shannon Doherty, something, something. He would remember. I don't remember what it is. He's listening to this episode right now and being like, this is what I said, Jason. On today's episode, we have the lovely Peng Shepherd talking to us about her brand new book, All This and More, which is a really fun adult choose your own adventure book. Peng Shepherd was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and has lived in Beijing, Kuala Lumpur, London, New York, and Mexico City. Her second novel, The Cartographers, became a national bestseller, was named a Best Book of 2022 by the Washington Post, and received a 2020 fellowship from the National Endowment of the Arts. Her debut, The Book of M, won the 2019 Newcomb Institute for Literary Arts Award for Debut Speculative Fiction, and was chosen as a Best Book of the Year by Amazon, Elle, Refinery 29, and The Verge, as well as a Best Book of the Summer by Today's Show and NPR's On Point.
Excellent.
I'm Jason,
I'm Brett.
and enjoy this not choose your own adventure episode of Gaze
Gaze
Reading.
reading. Look at you in your professional
Hi.
studio. Oh my
I said, no, this
gosh.
is just a curtain. This is my window in my apartment, and it makes me so backlit that no one can see me talk. So it looks like I'm in a studio, but
No, but even your microphone setup,
The
very
whole
profesh.
thing.
oh, yeah, it's so much better than hunching over your laptop trying to
I want you to start singing now.
say. Oh
I
no,
know, you look like
don't.
a
You definitely
recording
don't want
artist.
that.
You do.
No, I am the. I should never sing. No,
Okay. I think a lot of people sing, even though maybe they shouldn't.
it's true. That's true. At least I just know not to.
The worst thing that everyone has to do is, of course, the elevator pitch for the book. Do you have one? This is a good time to workshop it.
I do. Okay, yeah. So I can do my elevator pitch and you can workshop it. So all this and more. I'm going to start by saying it was the most complicated, but also the most fun book that I've written, I think, so far.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, for reasons that we'll get into.
Right.
But it's about a woman named Marsh, and she's basically spent her whole life just playing it safe. And then it turns out that when her world just implodes anyway, and she's facing divorce and her career is stagnated, her teenage daughter's kind of pulling away, and she's gone about everything all wrong. She's missed out on romance, adventure, fulfilling, like anything that she had wanted to do, she didn't because she wasn't brave enough. And she just wishes that if she could only go back and do it all over again, she would just do much better. She would seize every moment. And then she gets chosen to be on All This and More. And All This and More is a new game show that has somehow figured out how to send people back to very specific moments in their past so that they can make a different choice and then change the course of their present lives. And so she can't believe her luck. She accepts, she dives right in, and everything is great at first, but of course nothing is that simple. And so she, even as her life is getting better and better, she starts to worry that the show's promises might be too good to be true, because even as her life is improving, something seems a little bit off.
It clearly, you said game show. I think it's this interesting marriage of game show and reality show, because
Yeah.
it's almost, yes, there are obstacles and there are quote unquote games to play. And there is some sort of winning because of just the nature of, did you win at life? Are you making the right choices? But clearly very much reality show, because there's this voyeuristic component as well. Are you a reality show fan?
I have definitely become more of one since writing that. Yeah. So when we were talking earlier about living in Mexico City, and I did not have a TV when I was there, and so I didn't watch a lot of TV. But as I was writing first draft of this, I was like, I gotta see what's up. And so the reality show that I started with is the one where the two people get married, but the first moment that they see each other is at the altar when they have to say
It's
yes.
a blind date.
Oh, is it Married at First
Married
Sight?
at First Sight.
Married at First
That's
Sight.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what? I just fascinating. Yeah. So I got hooked on that one because it's just wild.
Similarly, equally wild is Love is Blind.
Oh, yes,
where-
I have seen that too. Yeah. I think that unfortunately what sometimes happens with these shows is when you get into the later seasons, the people that are coming on, they know too much about
Sure,
it. And so
sure.
they are, I just don't think you're getting as authentic of an experience as a viewer and as a contestant
Yeah.
or a participant. But it's especially for the earliest seasons of Married at First Sight and the earliest seasons of Love is Blind. I think they were really going in with genuine hope and
Yeah.
open-mindedness and also terror. It's
That
just-
first season of Love is Blind is
Yeah.
so good. It's like
Yeah.
genuinely good, because you're
Yeah.
you're getting this, as you were saying, real genuine human connection, and you're seeing them in their, I think, most authentic form. Though where the gaming the game comes in handy is something like Big Brother, which I have fallen in love with.
Mhm.
Did
Is this
you
a
ever
new
watch Big
thing?
Brother?
Is
No,
it-
I
It's
need
been
to.
on for like
No,
30
no, no, no,
years.
no. For you.
Oh.
Please, I've watched Big Brother, the early ones.
I
used to
watched
be
a season, I think, in high school, and then it came back into my life a couple years ago. And I was like, this show, it's just such an interesting sociological experiment, watching these people interact with each other, but also play a game. It is a social game. And it's an interesting obsession.
They're
Thank God it
gonna-
only
okay.
happens during the summer.
I just saw today, they're planning the 50th season of Survivor right now.
50.
That's
Wow.
nuts.
In your galley note, speaking of all of these things,
Yeah.
you say, I want all this and more to ask what it is to be happy and to examine what a choice really costs. Do you feel like you were able to examine that as the writer with this book?
I do, yeah. And it was the part of it that was the most interesting to me was when I started the book, I find the character as I write too. And so I was discovering Marsh as I went. And eventually she gains a husband who then becomes an ex-husband, and then she gained a daughter. And so as I was building her, I think the really interesting part about choice is also when she's choosing things to change her own life, it's going to affect other people too. Like a whole nother can of worms, because she's on this show. She has the power to go back and change it so that, for example, she had always pursued a career and was a really ambitious at her job, but that will also affect her daughter, because in the real world she had been at home for those early formative years, or that could affect her relationship with her husband at the time, because he was able to go off and do something while she was taking care of the house. And Marsh doesn't realize either that everything she's doing is also changing things for other people. And so she starts rationalizing it. As long as I'm making choices that are making their lives better, the people that I care about, that it's not just me, but I'm making everyone's life better, then it's okay, right? But actually nobody's asking those people,
Right, we're making
is that
assumptions.
yeah, it is better, but is that the better that they want, or is it just the better that you want?
That's so funny. We're sitting here talking about choices and making choices and choices. And something we have not yet talked about is the book is a choose your own adventure.
Literally a book of choices that you make. The reader.
You give power to the reader. Was that how you went into the book, or did you discover that along your writing process too, that you wanted it to be this choose your own adventure style journey?
Yeah, no, I started with the desire to write something with multiple paths in it. As a writer, I just love anything that plays with structure. So any kind of like multiple timelines or jumping back and forth. So I knew that I wanted to do something with multiple paths, but I wanted it to be relevant to the story, or like it wanted it to mean something thematically. I didn't want it to just be this thing that I was asking readers to do. There had to be like a point to it. And so when I found Marsh and I realized that it's a book about the choices that she can make and how she could change her life, that's when it all started to come together, because I thought, it is this book about what would you do if you were offered basically almost infinite possibilities. How would you know what's the right choice to make? And how would you, when there's always another path, how do you know when to stop and just start living instead? And so I wanted the reader to be able to feel that as much as not just read it, but I wanted them to experience that kind of that thrill, but also that danger of having the same options. And so that's where the idea of I'm going to ask the reader to help Marsh choose what to do came in.
And then as you went in, just in a technical standpoint, I'm so curious. Like I think of like a writer's room with a whiteboard and lines going down of each timeline, because it really is, you're doing alternate realities. So how did you then begin to separate? Because you're writing something linear at first and suddenly you're branching out into all these different segments.
Yeah. I don't know if you'll believe this. It is the truth. I did not have a map for the whole thing until like really late in the game, because I realized that I was going to give this book to my editor, and she was probably going to have a meltdown trying to make sure that everything like and so I thought, okay, I have to be able to prove to her and the production team that all of these paths do connect and they all make sense no matter what you choose. And so at that point I did do like a flow chart, but it was very late in the game. I don't know. I was just all up here like just a chaos.
For our listeners, she's like chaotically making circles with her hands around her head.
It's just all yeah.
Most of us can't remember what we had for breakfast, and you had 17 million storylines going through your head.
I also cannot remember what I had for breakfast, but somehow that, I don't know, you just get so deep into the world. Sure. And I remember even we'd be doing these things because in the book, you have to make sure at every choice point that the page number is correct. And so we would get drafts back from the production team and they would be asking us to check it. And I would be saying things like, no, but after when Marsh is in Iceland, she doesn't go there, she goes here or something. Because I've been like living it so long that I would be doing it without the book in front of me.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
That's incredible.
I also just want to say for our listeners, because I think I almost thought going into it, and this doesn't give anything away, but I was anticipating as the author, you were going to force the ending onto us, that it was going to converge into wherever you wanted it to be as you, the author. And that isn't true. It is really in the hands of the reader. And you can have a completely different experience from your friend. And Brett and I, again, we're not giving anything away, but we talked about some of the decisions we were making. And we have very similar personalities. And so we chose a lot of the similar things. But not all of our friends do. So it'll be really interesting. And I think it's just fun and clever and different. And I think to your point, like playing with structure, really neat and something we've never seen.
This is a fun book, absolutely, for a book club, to see where everybody ends up, to have those people all discuss and why they ended up and the choices you make and who you, especially when it comes down to personal relationships and who you would actually choose. Okay, we may cut this in terms of like for the main broadcast as a spoiler, because do you have, when you were writing it, in your mind, is there someone you absolutely, the ending you wanted for her?
Oh, that's such a hard, well,
you could talk about it without giving anything away.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. I could.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I love all of the endings because I think that they're all really meaningful, and there are different people who would legitimately choose each one. There's a very good reason to choose each of the endings, but there's one of them that I thought felt like most true for me, which I can say now.
I read all of the endings and I didn't feel like you projected one. You didn't seem to favor one over the other in the reading. All of them made sense as an ending for the book.
They were all like, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say they were all like equally fun to read.
Reading a book in general, you often might think to yourself, I wish they chose this other thing.
Of course.
Yeah. They did this other thing instead. And in this book, you like get to do all of it.
Yeah. I know, and I tried to be smarter than you, meaning I tried to think, oh, I know what she's doing, I'm going to choose this. And then it wouldn't do. And I'd be like, again, Jason, like what you were saying, I had this idea in my head that I thought she's going to bring all this back to the way she wants it to end anyway. And so that's how this is going to be. And so it's so cool knowing that it doesn't. It absolutely does.
But it was like stressful having the power in an interesting way.
Yeah, because you make it, it's not impulsive. You have to, I would sit there and think about it in a minute. Okay.
Yeah. If you were cast on All This and More, would you want the chance to change your life?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's so tempting, right? I think at the beginning, if you had asked me this when I was writing first draft, I would have said yes. And now that I've written the book, I think I would say, I would still want to say yes, because who wouldn't want, to go back and
because we're curious creatures and we want to know.
Yeah. And everyone has paths that they didn't take.
Yeah.
But I think, so what I've decided is that if I were going into the bubble, I would go in with a rule that I could not break. And I'm sure that I would break it immediately because we're all human. But my rule would be, if you go in, you can only change one thing. That's it. And then you have to leave, because otherwise it's just too addictive, right?
It's like going to the casino and I will only bet with my winnings, and then you're there until 3 o'clock in the morning.
But I can maybe do that if the caveat was I pick the moment I want to go back to, but it's not chosen for me. If I could say, this is where I want to go back to, and this will be the one thing I choose, and everything could play out from there.
What's scary is that it's the butterfly effect. Like, even that one moment, if you really start to untangle it, you're like, oh wait, but then that would happen.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I shouldn't do this.
Of course. I'm going to get the chocolate ice cream instead.
That's the sort of decision you'd want to make. One of the things the show, All This and More, says is that it's a new chance at perfect. What does perfect mean to you?
Oh, well, so I think that has also changed over the course of this book, because
interesting.
Yeah. So it's what we're all striving for, even if we don't say it or we don't even realize it, because just everything in our society, in our childhood, is just pushing you to be like better, but have the best grades, be the best at your hobby, have the best body, be the best at relationships, be the best on Instagram. And so I think that's what we all think we want. But over the course of writing this book, I've come to realize that I think perfect would actually be pretty horrible, because it would be so boring. If something was actually perfect, it'd be so boring. And there would just be nothing after that.
It's the Stephen Sondheim lyric, if life were only moments, then you'd never know you had one, right? If everything was perfect and there was nothing imperfect, then you don't even know that what you're living in is perfect.
Yeah.
So, and like, why settle for good enough when you can have perfect? And it's good enough is maybe
it's pretty good sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. And some things could be perfect, and you figure it out as you go. Stress me out thinking about the things that I would have changed.
Going down a
There's the-
rabbit hole after this conversation.
Did you
This
ever
afternoon's
see?
gone.
Yeah. Did you ever see what's the movie called? The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel or something
Yeah.
like that?
No, but
So
I've
they're
always
the-
wanted to.
Oh, okay. This is not a spoiler. It's
You
just a
can,
cute
though. It's
line
fine.
okay. So the premise of the movie is that all these old people see a hotel, like a luxury hotel in India, and they're like, "Oh, the UK is so expensive. Let's all just move there and live in paradise until we pass away." And they show up, and it's not done, and everything's a mess, and they're trapped in this. It's almost like a fire festival kind of situation. The person who owns the hotel and who's building it, it's a young Dave Patel, and he's earnest and ambitious and honest. And so, at one point, one of the older women comes down to see him, and it's just everything is wrong anyway. But also, there's no hot water in my room. There's no water, period, and there's no electricity. And he's trying to calm her down, and he says something like it's okay. This is actually great. All these things that are wrong, it's actually great. It's just, what do you mean it's actually great? And he goes, because we have a saying here, everything will be all right in the end. So if everything is not all right, it's not the end yet. And it's a little cheesy, but also I love it because it's true.
My version of that is go to bed earlier and it will be okay in the morning. Like I've said that to my daughter a lot because I always feel like you look at things differently the next morning. And usually it's like at the end of the day and if it's, and you're exhausted and things feel horrible. And I'm like, go to sleep, wake up, and then look at it with fresh eyes. And somehow that refreshes and you can look at it differently. And some of those things will just be like, okay, whatever. I was flipping out the day before.
Yeah, it's so true.
It'll all be okay in the end. Okay, I'm going to sleep a little better at night tonight.
Yeah, because if it's not okay, it's not yet the end.
Yeah.
That's the best part of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar to my question about what perfect means to you, I'm curious to ask the same question about what it means to be real, because the book also talks a lot about, or not talks about, but addresses like real life, reality show, being in your authentic self, making choices that are real for you, and are they real for other people? And it also made me think about the story of Pinocchio and being a real boy and what does it mean to be real? And anyway, I fell down a rabbit hole of what it means to be real. And so I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
So I think a lot of it has to do with if you have experienced and earned it yourself, because there are a lot of stories where some kind of interloper slips in and steals the life of another person, and we all automatically reject that. And I think it's because they didn't earn all those things that they now have. And so I feel it would be the same way with Marsh, for example, or any contestant went on the show. If you got to go back and basically play like Tetris with your life and then flash forward and you've got this amazing new present life, I think a lot of us would say that's not real because you didn't earn it or you didn't live through it and experience it. But then I think there are a lot of people who would also say, okay, so like maybe it's not real, but if you're happier, does that matter? What is more important, happiness or truth? And so that was a lot of what I was going back and forth between, because I think in some cases it is better to live. If there's some kind of a fantasy that makes you happy and it's harmless, maybe it is better to just believe the fantasy. And then sometimes it's not.
Which goes back to why reality shows are popular.
Yeah.
Because we put that with The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Look at that. All those fantasies about love and all these things that can be found and escapism.
But well, I was just going to say what you said about just earning it made me think too about like choices that you make can totally change your life to the point where you don't need to worry about money or access, and just like privilege becomes it just happens. It just becomes, right? Based on a choice that you make, suddenly you can be privileged. Suddenly you don't have any ambition, right? Or you didn't need to work for anything. And so it in turn is not real where you landed.
Yeah. And an extreme example is like trust fund kid that never, but like that's a stereotype for a reason. I think sometimes if you either, if you were just given infinite choice like that or infinite resources early or without kind of expecting it or feeling like you've earned it yourself, I think a lot of us would not know what to do with it. And then that's the kind of thing, if you're just so wealthy, for example, or so famous that you can't fail no matter what you do, like none of it is interesting anymore because whatever you do, it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The Nepo babies.
Yes.
Not even just Nepo babies, but just
I know.
It's even people who like fall into wealth or fall into fame. These people on these reality shows all of a sudden
winning the lottery,
Yeah, exactly. This overnight sensation, overnight fame thing that people
Yeah,
don't
it's also the
know how to
promise of
handle.
what social media does now too. Like all these people
Yeah.
who get on Instagram or TikTok and they have thousands and millions of followers
Yeah.
and they're not standing. Let's be honest, like the Kardashians never stood for anything. They were hot girls with a very savvy, business-minded mother. And they in turn have turned things into it. But hearing Kim
Mhm.
Kardashian talk about she worked so hard her whole life, and I was like, you released a porn tape. And then from there, things expanded. But let's be real. So
But
there's
it's
that
also tricky because to what we were just talking about, like you said, business savvy mother, like clearly it was earned.
for her, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
she
like,
was, yeah.
For
and
her,
so like,
absolutely.
but then it's like the waking up and into that privilege.
Sure.
How
Yeah.
do you, and yet it was earned, but it wasn't. So it's just, I don't know. It's complicated. It's very interesting.
I will say, they've made the most out of opportunities that were presented to them.
Mhm.
Those doors that they opened, or that all this and more for them, that they chose that. And some of it was very smart, obviously, because they've become very successful.
Yeah.
I know. Now suddenly I'm like, what can I go back to and quickly change? But it's also really interesting because in every version of the story, there are things that don't change because they're inevitable. Is there something in your life that you would hope that to be the case for, that never changed, that in every version, no matter what you chose, X stayed the same?
Oh, would it be corny to say that I would hope that I was always a writer? I really
No.
would. Like
No.
yeah, I wanted to be a writer ever since I was like the tiniest. There's this funny story about me from childhood, but it's true. So I used to, as soon as I learned how to write, I would try to write stories for my mom, like my, books.
Uh-huh.
And so I wrote this one, I don't know, I was like 5 or something, and I wrote this one about this spider he's a spider and he's lonely and he wants friends, but he's a spider, so everyone's afraid of him. And I wrote it, illustrated it. It must have been all of 5 pages. And I took it to my mom and I showed it to her. And so she thought it would be really cute if she took it to her work and laminated it and then put a little spiral spine in it.
Yeah.
And so she did that, brought it home, gave it to me as a present. And I thought I had been published. I thought it was a real book. And I swear, ever since that, I don't know, it was just something about getting to hold it and see it like that. And I
Yeah.
just was
Yeah.
like, more. I just want to do this all the time.
I love
What was
that.
it called?
It was called Webster because he's a spider. Webster. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Webster
I
the friendly
love
spider.
that.
God, I'm surprised that you didn't call Pickle Webster.
Oh, like, yeah.
It's funny. My first
Yeah.
thought, I think, was my husband.
Oh, I love that.
And then I wish he was always my
Oh.
husband in all of the versions of my life.
Oh my God, that's
That'd be
very
great.
romantic and sweet.
Now
I
you
was
have
just-
to follow that up. What are you gonna
Yeah.
I know, Brad. Good luck. What would you
I
want to be?
wouldn't change anything. No, but I was thinking this. It's like, it's an interesting theory because even if you could go back, it's not that you yourself change necessarily, but your circumstances might, depending on what you
Mhm.
pick. So it's
Yeah.
how you as a person respond to your new circumstances.
Sure.
How it's like we were talking about earlier. It's like how people respond to the fact of fame. You hear so many
Yeah.
actors talk about it's thrust upon them and suddenly they have no privacy. And suddenly you're dealing with all these things that you never anticipated. You just wanted to become, or sometimes it's by circumstance. You happen to
Yeah.
be cast in something, you're an amazing actor, and suddenly you can't go out of your house. It's just an interesting theory to think, even if you go back, even if you change something, what changes about you or what stays the same? I used to have years ago, I had a therapist who said I was having trouble in a relationship, and she just said, you're going to have the same problem in your next relationship because the problem is with you. You understand that, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? I'm perfect. But and so I think about that. If even going back to change something, how much it's based on circumstance.
Hmm.
That's what's
Yeah.
fascinating in terms of
Yeah.
what she faces.
What is it? What
So-
is that phrase? Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
For
Or
better or
some-
for worse.
Yes. Or
Yes,
someone else
for
said to
better
me
or
once,
worse.
whatever you are today, you will be tomorrow even more, which was horrifying to me. In some elements, I was like, really? Okay. Some things were
Yeah.
fine, but
It's funny that you say that not funny, obviously, you're a writer who's now been published multiple times, but that you say that this was something since you were a little kid, because you also describe Marsh as a person who's been in love with being a lawyer since she was very young too. Goes on to say that she liked the idea of trying to find the truth at the heart of something, which
Mhm.
sounds very much like a writer to me too.
A little bit. Yeah.
Do you relate to that? Do you feel like that's something that you're doing, uncovering the truth at the heart of something?
Oh, definitely. I think that's why we all write, because
Yeah.
we we feel something that either we understand or we don't understand. And the whole process of writing a book is just being like, hey, I feel this thing. Do you also feel it? Do you feel it like this? Is it the same for you too? And
Mm.
I think a lot of fiction is that.
We read a lot of books. I'm not convinced that every author goes on that same journey.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But I appreciate that. It's like a part of why we do this podcast is because we not even just talking about the books, but just like getting to the root of humans, because at the end of the day, we're just people engaging with each other in creative ways.
Yeah, and we're all just so weird in our own way.
We
Everybody's
are.
just
Yes.
so weird.
Yes.
We are. So the book covers, you're covering a lot of locales. And I'm so curious, are you a traveler?
Yes, I love to travel. And I actually ended up, the locations that we visit in All This and More, I have been to them. I didn't go there knowing that I was going to put them in the book, but it was
Sure.
usually a case of like when I went to Iceland, I just fell in love with it. And I thought, I don't know, it's just so beautiful and so strange. I've never seen such strange landscape in a good way.
Mm.
It just looks so different. It looks like the end of the world, like
Wow.
everywhere you go. There's actually there's a beach there where all of the sand is just jet black. And then the cliffs behind it are jet black. And then the water that's rolling in is this icy blue, white
I've seen
because
that
it's like
place.
Whoa.
I've seen it on Instagram.
beautiful. I'm going to sound grim. I don't mean it in a grim way, but when I went there and it was a really windy day and the wind was so loud that you couldn't hear anyone else talking. And there weren't a lot of other people on the beach anyway, but you could just hear nothing, not even your own footsteps. And I was walking in this jet black sand and I just remember thinking like, I bet this is what it looks like when you die. Because it's just so like, it was so beautiful, but so unlike anything that seemed like it could be on Earth. And I thought, I hope when I die, like this is where I wake up. It's just so different.
That's so interesting. I somewhat similarly, or at least what that made me think of, is I've floated in the Dead Sea before.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, people tell you about the salt content and you'll float and, you sort of assume you know what that means and what that will feel like, but you really don't. And you have this experience, or it is very uncommon for an adult to have an experience of wonder for the first time that
Yeah.
you don't
Mhm.
experience as a young person.
Mm.
And so when I was there as an adult and experiencing this thing and watching all the people around me experiencing this thing of wonder as well, it just was this weird magical, and you're also like at the lowest point of the world. Like I guess it didn't in the moment feel like maybe what it feels like when you die, but upon reflection, maybe it also felt that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can imagine how. Yeah, I would love to go do
Otherworldly.
that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Where
tell you
have
to,
you?
you have to go in backwards and
You
then
do?
you,
Oh,
like,
and then lay down.
yeah, you like sit down into it. It just like lifts you up. Fascinating.
Well,
How
why can't
weird,
you go?
yeah.
Why can't you go forward?
Because of the salt content, it literally makes you float. And
So
so
it picks
like-
you up.
Fall.
Okay.
yeah, you could fall over, fall
Yeah.
forward, and you
Oh.
like can't get it in your eyes, or because it would just
Oh,
be tremendously painful. They tell you it's really bad if you have even minor cuts and things. So yeah, the
Wow.
idea is you go in backwards and you sit down into it. And it's
Wow.
really what it feels like. It's so weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, is there someplace you haven't been yet that you really want to go?
Oh, I would really like to go to Uzbekistan, and I'm going to go next year, I think.
Oh,
Yeah. I just
why
think
there?
it's so beautiful. The photos of, I don't know, it's just like they have all these just like gorgeous buildings and like really old like temples and ruins. And I grew up in Phoenix, which is a desert, but it's just a very different looking desert to deserts outside the US. So it's,
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that Uzbekistan is the place they want to travel to. So I'm excited. I can't
There you
wait
go.
for you to report back.
yes, I will. Yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited.
To obviously keep talking about your book and not to talk about all of the ways it stressed me out. But it also just got me thinking about, it's not a whole book about choices, but obviously it also is. And I feel like it's something that we do on a daily basis, make choices. Everything from hitting the alarm clock one more time to the socks that you put on to every single thing we do throughout the day is a choice. And so it made me think about like the things you can't undo and the fear of the unknown that makes you just hesitant to even make a decision and make a choice. Do you find that to be true? Have you found, are you a leap and the net will come kind of person? Or which is my something I always say for myself, it's let's just do it, leap and the net will come, we'll figure it out. Or are you a little more cautious?
No, I think I'm definitely like just jump now, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right decision sometimes either. So I've definitely
Uh-huh.
leapt too early and then, oh, there's not a net. And then it's like a mess. And that was one of the really interesting things about writing Marsh because she's
Yeah.
totally the opposite of me. And
Yeah.
so it was fun to be in a different set of shoes where the character's reaction is exactly the opposite of mine.
Other than like egg on your face, foot in your mouth, weird, a lot of weird turns of phrase. What is the worst that can happen if you make a wrong choice? I guess
I
depending on
mean,
how big the decision
You
is.
could die.
yeah, I think the worst what I think the worst outcome would be if it ends up hurting someone else. So I would think like
Mm,
relationships. If you're either getting into one you shouldn't be in, or you're like leaving one that you actually shouldn't leave, you just, but if you stayed, it could be better, but you leave instead. Or you get into a relationship and it becomes serious and you probably shouldn't have been with that person. Or if they're, and then if you break up and there are kids involved, the kids get hurt too.
I think you're right. It's about relationships and also just like other, how do these decisions affect other people too, right? It's
Hmm.
because then it becomes selfish if you're making choices and not thinking about how it affects everything else.
Yeah. And even sometimes it is the right choice and you do have to hurt someone else. But if I like think back on my
Mm,
own life, I don't often regret having made a choice, even if it made something harder for me or I like lost an opportunity because of it. Because that is just me. I'm yeah, like a leap and see if there's a net there. But the
yeah.
things that I do regret are if it hurt someone else. And when there was just no way to not hurt someone.
But right to your what you also just said about sometimes even if you do hurt someone, it is the right decision to make, but it is about considering other people too. It's not
Yeah.
it's thinking through the process, right? It's not always
Yeah.
just like leaping. It's like step leap.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God. So another quote from the book is that change is never easy, but is always worth it. Do you agree with that?
Maybe.
Mm,
Because I am a leap and then check if there's a net there, I tend to think that change is going to be better because it feels like progress. But
Hmm.
I guess it is not. Sometimes newer is better, but sometimes newer is just different. And that's I think as we all get older, I am learning the difference too. The older and wiser I get, I'm starting to realize that sometimes newer is just different. It's not better. But it's
mm.
like that's really the lifelong lesson that you're learning, I think.
Sure. And
Sometimes I go to
also,
a go ahead, Brad.
no, I was going to say, and sometimes, and also as you get older, speaking as the senior of the group, you begin to, your options begin to narrow in
Mhm.
all capacities. Like, I mean, you have children and that changes something. And so your choices have to be a little more thoughtful and specific because
Mhm.
it does have a bigger effect in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to say, even though I'm a leap in the net will come kind of person, I still will order the same thing at a restaurant that I know I like because I don't want to take the risk on that other thing. Because what if I don't like it? It costs
Right.
money.
Yeah. Food's important too. You got to really enjoy that meal, you know?
Yes, exactly. No matter what it is. I'm like, oh, why didn't I order that thing?
Sometimes it's as hard as like picking a different color shirt than what you normally go for.
I do the
Choose
thing
like,
where I like find it in a style I like and then I buy all the colors. So like
I
every
know.
silhouette is exactly the same. I just have it in five
yes,
colors.
yes.
That's me. That's me.
But
I'm
that's very
100% the
thoughtful.
same.
That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
thoughtful and thought out, and there's not a risk
There's
involved.
no, yeah. And I hate shopping. I hate shopping. And so it just makes shopping like 50, like 1/5 of the time because I just have to find one shirt and then I just buy every
Are
color.
you the
Mm,
same way in regards to food? Could you eat the same? Like my husband, when I met him,
Mm.
when we first met, like every night he would have contadina pasta with pesto. Every morning he has granola with yogurt. There's no
Mhm.
variance,
that's
and he's
funny.
fine with that. Where I would be like,
Oh,
can't you have a pancake? And he could, but like his default always the same. Are you like
I
that at
think
all? Or
sorta. Yeah, I think sometimes I get into these. I don't know what I get like hyper fixated on a couple meals and I'll just eat that for I don't know, a week, a month, and then I switch to something else and go really hard on that for a week or a month. It's probably like related to stress or busyness is probably what it is.
sure,
Wait,
sure.
when's your birthday?
April 12th.
Oh
So
my God, I knew it. Mine is April 6th. And I was like, I
ah
wonder if this is an Aries thing. And sure
yeah.
enough, It is. Because
Okay,
everything
do
you're
you-
talking about, I'm like, this is me.
Yeah. Okay. Do you do the thing where you listen to the same song on repeat like
Over and
500
over again.
times?
And then
Okay,
I
you guys,
hate
what
it.
is your song right now?
Yeah.
What is the most current overplayed song for both of you?
Oh, so right now because I'm writing, it's usually like an instrumental thing that I've just got
Sure.
looping
Oh.
endlessly. What have I been looping? I don't know. At one point, I was looping stuff from the Inception soundtrack or
Okay.
from the Social Network soundtrack, actually.
Okay.
Is that what it's called? The Social Network
Yeah.
movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like a little creepy and mysterious, but a little caper.
And it can sit in the back of your head and just
Yeah.
open.
And keep you in the zone. Yeah.
And you, Jason?
I don't know what mine is most recently. I feel like I maybe haven't been listening to a lot of music. It's been a lot of podcasts, but last year was like my year of What Else Can I Do from Encanto,
Oh,
which is so lame. But I just find some of these lyrics very moving. And it was inspiring to me. So I like needed to listen to it. over and
I
over and
love
over.
that you were
Yeah.
embracing like your 15-year-old girl right there with it. I love
Listen,
that.
I would not change it for a second.
No, I love it. I love it. Let it go.
Wait, what? I'm gonna Google the lyric in a second so I can explain to you why I feel very profound about it.
right.
But something we haven't talked about yet that again, as we're talking about decisions, and maybe I don't know, fellow Aries, if you feel this way, but I don't like it when people ask for my advice. I give it to them and then they don't take it because I'm just like, what did I give you
Oh.
my advice for?
Yes. Yeah.
But there is, because All This and More, the TV show is live, there's also a live chat. And there is
Mm.
something about people with an outside perspective that can see things in a different way. So one, I think this is a PSA, trust your friends because they have an outside perspective. But two, how do you feel about that?
Oh, I mean, I definitely, any big decision, and this is part of my trying not to leap before I have step. And so I have like a small crew of, it's like my best friend, my mom, my partner, and I try to run everything by them and like really, because they know me best, but they are
Sure.
knowing me from the outside. And so I think that they really do, they have stopped me from jumping towards something that I shouldn't jump for, like pull me back from the edge.
Yeah.
But yeah, not always, but I think very often sometimes they can just see things better than you can because they're coming at it without the emotion. They're just looking at, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't listen to them every time.
No, but valuing,
often,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the lyric that moves me every time is, what could I do if I just grew what I was feeling in the moment? What could I do if I just knew it didn't need to be perfect? It just needed to be, and they'd let me be. And I find that very
Yeah.
moving, right? Like it doesn't need to be something perfect. It's just, it'll just be what it is.
Mm.
And that'll be that. And it'll be perfect because I made it. Right. And that, I think, as a concept, that's like the nugget of the whole song. And I was like, oh, this means a lot to me right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, not that I need to justify myself, Brett.
You do not at all. You do not at all. Absolutely not. Please.
Anyway, you talked about writing. Can you talk at all about what, even in a secret-y way, about what you're working on?
Oh, I can't. Yes, this will be great. I can workshop it again because
Okay.
I've
Okay.
like barely, I'm only partway through the first draft and I've like basically not talked about it at all. So it's a lot darker than All This and More. It's a lot darker. And it's, how do I describe it? It's about body doubles who are like, they're secretly hired to impersonate like a very rich, famous person. And the story is about how just as their lives become increasingly intertwined in really dangerous ways, how everything starts to unravel.
Fascinating. I feel like you're like leaning into this big questions about the universe thing.
And identity.
My first book, The Book of M, was also a lot about, it was about what's the relationship between identity and memory. And if you're losing one, can you keep the other? Or a little bit about like love and memory too. If you're losing one, can you keep the other? And I think, I just find body doubles so fascinating, especially if you're doing more than just like mere impersonation. If you're really trying to convince somebody that you are that person, like
Yeah.
what happens to your own self, the better you get at that. And what does it mean for your original that you're mimicking if you become like even more convincing than they are? Like who are all of you really anymore at that point?
And then the camp
Yeah.
version of this is the drag queens who impersonate and become the
Oh my
characters that
gosh,
they
they're
are.
so good. They're so good.
I know some of these people really embody the entertainers that they are impersonating. Anyway,
Yeah, they really do.
that sounds
That sounds
so
really amazing.
interesting and
Thanks,
different,
yeah.
and I'm excited for it. Eventually, no pressure.
Yes, yeah. No, it's like going slow, but because it feels like really delicate and subtle because it's all about just, the relationships between these guys. But it's so much fun. I'm
Yeah.
having a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
Cool. I know it,
Yeah.
it reading your work feels like you have fun writing. That
Oh, I'm glad I really do. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that comes through. Yeah.
all back to Webster. Was that his name?
Webster, yeah.
It
Yeah.
all goes back to Webster.
Webster.
Thank you for
It
sharing
does.
that story with us.
Yeah, of course.
You still
yeah.
have it?
I do actually. It's somewhere in this apartment. I do. Yeah.
Oh, if you find it, I'd love to see a picture of the cover. I
Okay,
think
yeah.
we could share it on social media if that would
Yeah.
be
I also
okay.
love the
That's
Yeah,
moment
yeah.
too. Like I love, as a parent, it's almost like it's all come to fruition. And she saw that, and you sharing that with her. I said that's got to be so special now to be like, it's like you've done so well. It's just a great thing.
And it somehow came up, and I told that story, and it was in Phoenix, and she cried in the front row. It was so because she's like, I didn't know you remembered.
That's so cute.
Oh, but I'm like, of course I remember. That was such an important book to me. It was like it was my
Oh.
first book. So
That's so cute.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so sweet. It really is.
she's a great mom. She's like really the best
She
mom.
sounds like it, and that's just
Shout
you know,
out to mom.
Yeah, shout out to your
Yeah.
mom. It's amazing.
We
Yeah.
love it. This has been so lovely.
Just delightful.
Yeah, I had such a great time.
If you've reached this point in the show, you've chosen to turn to page 479, and you're at the end of the episode.
So funny. Peng, thank you so much for being here. Everyone, go check out all this and more. You could find it in our bookshop.org page or wherever you get your books. And we'll see you next week for another book that comes out today. But we are
Yes.
having him on our show next week. Lev Grossman talking to us about his book, The Bright
Bright-
Sword.
Fantastic.
I don't know why I rolled my R, but it sounded like something that someone in King
It was
Arthur's court
very
would do.
fancy. It was very fancy.
Thank you. Bye.